Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Change Physician Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, joined with my co-host, Dr. Melissa Cady, and our returning guest, Dr. Heather Hammerstedt, who is the CEO and founder of Wholist, which is a health coaching, nutrition type of company that really is kind of scaling effective lifestyle and behavioral change, which we have done a horrible job in the medical system. So I'm so happy to see people, particularly physicians, taking ownership and really creating these creative strategies. And what she is coming back on the show for us today is to talk about coaching. And the importance of this is particularly if you've seen anything in the online world, or even kind of the way people talk about coaching, is there's more to it than we tend to appreciate. So there's a lot of people running around saying they're coaches, or people say that you may need coaching. Health coaching is a big kind of a newer thing when it comes to medicine, with the recognition that so much of our overall health is affected by lifestyle and behavioral strategies. So how can we incorporate effective coaching? And so this is today's episode. Let's talk about coaching, what it is, what it isn't, what are best practices with Wholist physician, Dr. Heather Hammerstedt. So Heather, thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I went and got my health coaching certificate while I was still in medical school 16 years ago, because I recognized so early of what we were missing in conventional medicine. And I didn't use it for a long time, but I'm so thankful that I have it now, because I think at this point, I think everyone needs a coach. We all need a coach for something. I think I will probably never not have a coach for something at some, at any point in my life moving forward, is my guess. And I'm really excited to see so many other physicians, jumping onto coaching and figuring out what their niche is and how they can improve their practice or improve our communities through coaching. So happy to answer any questions or talk about anything you guys want to today.
All right. Well, let's start with the first one. And I'm really big about definitions so that we kind of all understand what it is we're talking about. So in your definition, or how would you explain, what is coaching in general? What is coaching? And more importantly, what isn't coaching?
Yeah, I think this is all my opinion. I'm sure everybody has lots of other thoughts, but I think of coaching as being the opportunity to hold space for someone to create their own behavior change. And whether that's business coaching, or if it's life coaching, or if it's health and nutrition coaching like we do, it's instead of prescribing someone to do something, telling them what to do, which is generally what we do in conventional medicine, it's asking questions to get people to figure out, are they in a pre-contemplative change, behavior change mode? Are they in contemplative? Are they in action mode? Are they in maintenance mode? And it's helping people by asking them questions focused at that stage of where they are, to be able to get them to move forward towards the change that they want. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. But I want to kind of drill down on that a little bit more and emphasize that, because the way that you're describing coaching is creating a space, listening, questioning, figuring out where your client is starting from. That sounds a lot different than I think maybe some people would assume when they hear coaching and think, well, I can just go and coach. That's advice giving. But it doesn't sound that's what you're talking about. This is not advice giving. It's a different sort of skill set.
Yeah, what's really interesting is it's kind of the opposite advice. We have all that advice that we want to give. And I think especially for those of us that are physicians and doing this, it's kind of hard not to just be like, well, just do this, right? As my husband told me once, this is an aside, but maybe a month or so ago, he had some problem and I gave him an answer and he said, don't you just understand that sometimes I don't need a solution? And I was like, oh, I think it took me 20 years to understand that about you. But I think that's also what we're talking about in coaching, is it's that people sometimes don't need a solution externally given to them. What they need is to go through the process to discover what's going to work for themselves in their own life. And so by not saying eat this at this time, this many times for this many weeks, and you're going to lose weight, what we're doing is saying well, why do you think that you ended up making that choice? What was it that you were thinking or feeling that you were buffering with that food instead of feeling it, right? Instead of processing that emotion. And so it's really letting people explore that in a safe place where there's no judgment.
So it sounds much more introspective in a lot of ways. And you kind of touched on it when we started. You're thinking everybody needs a coach, or you believe that everybody should have a coach. So why is this kind of introspective space developing? Why is coaching important? Why do you think people should have coaches in their lives?
I think regardless of where you are, like, so for me right now, I have a sales coach who's like helping me become better at helping people take action towards purchasing something that's going to change their life. Right. And so I was already pretty good at it. I mean, I have a pretty successful company, but having someone else external to me to like listen to the things that I'm doing and to, give me suggestions or ask me questions to help me grow, is only making me that much better. And I think that regardless of what it is that you're trying to tackle in life, it's building a business, it's figuring out marketing, it's figuring out how to not be burned out as a physician, right? That sometimes you can't see those things about yourself. I mean, we have blinders on to ourselves in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It seems like, we're so close to it. Like you said, like it's hard for us to appreciate, even in our own family. There's certain things that you're so close to it. Sometimes it's hard to either help elicit change, because you get to a point where you're so frustrated, you just throw the information out there thinking that that's enough logic to make the change, but that's not quite how it works. And I'm curious, it seems like if someone's going to be a coach, you kind of need a coach to help you learn how to coach effectively. I mean, so how do you know, who the right people are to coach, and who are those people that could be good coaches?
To teach you how to be a coach? Is that the question?
Or how could you, like in your business, create coaches that are effective? Like, how do you know who the right person is to coach clients?
Yeah, it's really hard to know as a client. How do you find the right person? There's no coach certification that's like across the board what everyone should be doing, right? In terms of health coaching, there is now the National Board of Medical Examiners now actually has a health coach certification exam that you can take as a health coach if you come from several different specific organizations that teach coaching, right? So I think that's a big movement forward for health coaching. But for life coaching or for business coaching or anything else, there's not anything like that. So I think you have to find the right personality that you're going to be able to work with, really. And it's the person that you feel comfortable with. And most coaches will get on a strategy call or a discovery call with you for free at first so that you can banter a little bit about what it is that they offer and what you need to see if you're a good fit. For me, I've hired coaches based on, how I feel their presence is when I talk to them. And most of those, but not all, are other physicians. And I will actually, I'll give them like a free client and Zoom kind of spy on them and just make sure that I, think that they're, going about it the same way. I think most coaches though are going to be focusing on, what we talked about at the beginning, sort of figuring out exactly where you are, what the next steps are, and are going to be less prescriptive and more, open-ended with it. Yeah. I think is important.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, and I don't want to stereotype physicians, but we tend to, a lot of us can be, stuck with the information. Like you said, it can be really hard sometimes to go there, where a lot of times there's emotions and other things that maybe even we as physicians may not have been comfortable delving into ourselves and navigating that world and have the patience for that. Because it seems like I even have to check myself if I'm trying to coach somebody, where I have to really be curious enough to try to understand what's going on inside and try to put those pieces together in a way that allows them to kind of get it out for themselves. Do you think that there's probably, a lot of physicians might have trouble going into that space because maybe they're not used to going there on an emotional side? I think we're very stoic at times, but thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think stoic's a great word. I just listened to a podcast from an emergency physician about the philosophy of stoicism, which is why I just stopped to think for a second. It was really interesting. I think that most people who become successful coaches have been through something that helped them create a process for themselves that they can mirror for other people. And so I'm thinking specifically in the physician world, there are so many of our colleagues that are doing, you know, physician wellness around depression, anxiety, burnout, kind of all these things that we know that we struggle with as a profession. And so many of them came through that and found coaching themselves and are now offering that. And I think that that is probably a really key aspect of their journey to be able to share and empathize and let someone else come through it themselves instead of trying to think that this is the way, you know? So I think that there is a specific aspect around that for sure, for most coaches, but physicians for sure.
Yeah.
Kind of returning then back to medical school, when you got your coaching certification, what were the primary skills that you learned in your coaching program when you were in medical school that you weren't learning? Like, what was the select differences that you learned while you were learning coaching that were not taught in medicine?
Oh, anything about food and movement?
Well, but I guess what I'm looking at is about, so we know that there's an absence of movement and exercise kind of in medical school, but I'm sort of looking at more of the questioning or thought processes.
Yeah.
Like in medicine, we're taught to, how do you do in HPI and how do you do the patient almost interrogation that we're doing? What were the key skills that you pulled away from health coaching that either were different or then you found optimized your medical practice?
So I think I can speak more clearly, because that was a really long time ago, around coaching that I learned while going through lifestyle medicine certification, because they really rely heavily on hiring coaches into your practice. And so they teach about that a lot. And they also partner with a company called Well Coaches, which trains wellness coaches that is like aligned with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So I think that theory is really like figuring out how to figure out what place they are in these trans-theoretical behavior change stages that I was referring to earlier, and how to ask questions based on that. So instead of asking someone who's pre-contemplative about becoming plant-based and more mindful about their eating, instead of saying like, well, what you need to do to replace all of your meat and cheese is this, right? And like giving them that meal plan, is being like, so like, what's making you think about this? Like, can I ask you a personal question? Like, what is it that now in your life is bringing you to a place that you're even thinking about becoming plant-based? I mean, you can't lay on plans to someone who's not ready to hear it. And I think that's an important thing for physicians to learn in general, whether you're going to be a coach or not, because I think so many of us are telling people what to do when they're not going to do it, because they're not in a place to do it. So I think that was a key skill. I think also just learning more. I think my health coaching certificate in 2004-ish was really around like how many different ways there are to think about eating and to think about moving, and being like open to all of those things. So I think that was kind of the skill building for me that came out of that. I'm sure that they do things differently these days than they did then. And I know that there are a lot of physicians who have gone through that training since I have, which was great, because I was the only person in my class who's from medical background. So back then.
I gotta imagine that our prescriptive tendencies in medicine, and we think of standard of care and what people should be doing, it's got to be it's just a really hard transition to open your mind up to the possibilities of the options for people, whether they seem like they need to be checked off or not. So I'm sure that is a little bit of an obstacle.
Yeah. I think for most people, for sure. I mean, I went into medicine, thinking already about Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine and all of those things. So that's kind of why I was still looking externally. I think that a lot of people going through the medical training practice, it just kind of narrows them down. I mean, I just remember when we were like first year medical students and everyone was all friends. And by the time we were like third years and like the surgeons were becoming surgeons and ER was becoming ER, and like everybody just kind of pocketed off and like just kind of assumed those personalities. I think we did a lot of that in terms of our learning and curiosity as well.
Yeah.
So people may be hearing this and they're like, well, okay, we're talking about coaching. Maybe I should learn about this, but I'm already a time-pressed physician. How am I supposed to pull these skill sets in? And I know there's two answers. One, you can hire a coach for your practice, which may actually be better because just because we don't have the skill set doesn't mean you have to master those skill set, find the right people.
Totally.
On the certain other hand, though, I think some of these principles could be adaptable to your medical practice, particularly if you're frustrated with patients who aren't quote unquote following your directions. And I'd like your kind of opinion on that, because people say, well, I'm a busy primary care physician, I'm a busy surgeon. Well, you're an ER physician. Who else is busier than an ER physician who's juggling, 15 patients at once?
Yeah.
Are you incorporating any of your coaching background into those visits?
Yeah, I totally am. So the answer is, how can you do it yourself? First off, I think hiring a coach into your practice is awesome. There's a bunch of lifestyle medicine doctors who have conventional practices that do that have a health coach or a nutritionist working as a health coach who can spend more time than they're able to really like tee things up and have the physician just do kind of the purely medical aspect. And a lot of that's happening in like the direct care sort of realm. And in terms of learning it yourself, there are organizations, I mean, everything's online now, but even beforehand, that you can do over like a 18 to 20 week period where you're doing virtual learning to become a coach. So the Well Coaches School does that. And a couple of the life coaching schools do that, I know, as well as the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is where I went. So I think, there are ways to build that in to learn. I think there's always something we could be saying no to, right? Like we're pretty bad at that, but you can always be prioritizing your time and where you want to be spending it. As to the direct question of what I do in emergency medicine, yeah, I honed my skills over the last maybe 5 years, being really really concentrating on how I can get a good conversation in 2 minutes. Because like, honestly, like if you see me for more than 5 minutes, like you're hosed, like there's something really wrong with you, because we just don't have the time to spend. So, so I've been able to figure out how to kind of not coach, but get to kind of key lifestyle changes that I think that people need to make, and try to figure out a way to couch it in a way that they can hear it when they're in their perceived emergency or emergency situation, right? So they're there because they had chest pain and ended up being GERD and esophageal spasm, but they thought they were having an MI, right? And so they might actually hear me when I'm telling them what they need to be doing with their changes, when their primary care doctor was never able to access that part of them. So, so I've actually packaged this into a lifestyle medicine course for physicians, where it's an 8-week podcast driven course where they can listen and learn and then get I call them Hammer 2-minute takeaways, so that they can kind of try to take that lesson and implement it in a really like tiny time frame for patients.
Is there a way that you kind of figure out who's the ideal client? Or, I mean, do you take all comers, or do you kind of put them through some kind of screening?
Into Holist for our
Yes,
weight wellness
Holist
program. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we have, as we talked about last time, I'm big into automation and efficiency. And so I don't want me or my strategy coaches to be spending time with someone on a free discovery call if they're not the right person. So the answer is that I have ads that, are targeted and built audiences around people who like things like what we do, or people who are searching for things like we do. They sign up for a webinar. They watch the whole webinar. The only call to action in that webinar is for them to get onto a call with us. So if they choose to do that, then they have homework they have to do, including videos they have to watch before they get on the call with us, so that they already have a feeling for what we're doing. They already have like a philosophy behind what we're doing. They've been able to show that they're going to do the work and take action. And then we spend about 45 minutes on the phone with each person, about, you know, what their specific issues are, what they're struggling with, what they've tried before, what hasn't worked before. And there are certainly people that we don't offer the program to. If it's not right, we send them to someone else, or we send them free trainings, or they're just in our Facebook group. Because you have to be, you know, if you want to take on something like what we do, like, we're going to hold you accountable, and we're going to expect you to do the work, and we're going to expect you to stumble and need help, and we can help you if you're willing to be helped. But not everyone's in that place, right? Not, some people are pre-contemplative and doing research instead of trying to make a decision to change their life.
Yeah.
There's an, you know, application form, and we get tons of information before they get on the phone with us, which is helpful.
And then when you engage them into the process, how much of, is it like 50% online, 50% on the phone? Like, how is it kind of structured?
So it's a 12-week program. Every day they get a podcast sent to them on weight science and on mindset around food. It's sort of like a blueprint that kind of walks them through the 12 weeks of all the things that I want to say to every single person, but don't have the time to. Mm-hmm. So they listen to me every morning. They have documents and references and transcripts that go along with that every day, for like, kind of like a university level course, basically, around weight and food. And then they have a video call once a week with their weight coach. And then they have the opportunity to group chat with all of us on an app that we have, as well as taking photos of their food that goes to the coaches, so it can track when and what they're eating. So we're not obsessing and counting calories and macros and all those things. We're just trying to decide what their plate looks like and what works for them. And then they have a mindset coach as well that meets them 4 times on video. So it's all virtual, but there are a lot of touch points.
Good. Can we expand on the mindset coach a little bit here? Because I'm sure that many people in the audience may not know what's a mindset coach, and why do you have to have a coach for your mind? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. And I think it's a really growing field, and I feel like I kind of made up the term at the time. But I think it's becoming more common, especially in like business coaching, to like have someone available for you. And really what it is it's helping you figure out how your thoughts are affecting your results. So, you know, we talk all the time in parenting, right, about growth mindset and fixed mindset. So a fixed mindset is someone who believes that they were born with the things that they have, and that's just the way that it is, right? And a growth mindset is someone who believes that their path forward is through growing and changing and acquiring new skills. And so it's sort of the same thing with mindset coach. It's trying to figure out kind of what are the thoughts that you're having that are limiting your ability to get to whatever goal that you have. Because understanding that, like, we can't control your circumstance, but you can control your thoughts about it, is what creates your feelings and your actions and your results. And so sometimes it depends on what type of style of our mindset coaches, of how they approach that. Sometimes if it's going to be a life coach oriented sort of mindset coach, which we have several, they're literally going to be like, what's another thought that you could have around this circumstance that you have? And force that thought a little bit, right? It feels a little bit false. It feels weird. You know, I don't want to like say I'm successful and powerful today, right? But sometimes those kind of thoughts, they actually do create other feelings, which do create actions and get you the results. So sort of rewiring your brain a bit like that. I have a hypnotherapist who's a mindset coach who's really digging into, getting you into a guided meditative state to figure out what are the kind of thoughts and circumstances and experiences you've had in the past that have led you to the actions that you currently do without even thinking about it, like subconsciously, and helps you sort of confront and clear those things. And then we also have a neurologist on staff who does neuro coaching, really doing biohacking around how your brain and your hormones work around sleep and exercise and decision making and those kind of things. So I think, a mindset coach can really be anything, as long as it's concentrating on how do you actually like get out of your brain and analyze it a little bit and realize that we make 700 new neurons a day. And so the opportunity for those neurons to play together in a new way means that you're creating new tracks and really able to rewire the way that you approach your life, which is, I think one of the biggest things that we give the people in our program is not just, how much they weigh, but it's the ability to analyze themselves and their emotions and their actions and where they want to be. You end up with people like getting out of relationships and getting into relationships, getting new jobs, like all sorts of things out of it. So it's fun.
Making transformative change, which is what I just love about it. And you don't see enough, and it is so critical, that mindset, and yet so few people really recognize that. You mentioned growth versus fixed mindset, Carol Dweck's research, and that book, when I read it at the age of 38, completely transformed my life. I'm like, holy crap, what? And I was such a fixed mindset person, but it impacted how I parent my kids. It impacted how I see really my practice. So yeah, I'm just seeing you're gushing here because I'm so happy that you have.
Yeah, I love that. What's so funny is that I'm helping so many docs do some business mastermind courses that are coming up in the fall. And I just recorded all my videos yesterday and talked about that book, as a matter of fact. I think it really is, it can be transformative. There's another book called Grit that I think is really awesome as well. And another book called Relentless. Both of those, I only listen to books these days while I'm commuting or something, but I think all three of those books are really essential for you to get your brain around kind of what this mindset work is and how it can really change your life. And they use great examples of, Carol Dweck's books talks a ton about, studies and research that they've done on people and on children. Relentless talks a lot about business practice and athletes and how they use mindset to improve their performance.
I think that's, as much as we're talking about coaching and the various components, I think it's obviously great to have nutritional guidance and some, actual things that people can learn, but it hands down, I feel like that mindset coaching is the biggest part and biggest player. Nowadays we have so much information overload out there, and it might be hard just to figure out what that is. And and coaches can help direct that, but there's nothing like digging deep. It's the most uncomfortable, hardest work, and takes the most time for us to, rewire and be aware first and foremost. I think being aware of that, like, Kevin was just talking about, is critical for every aspect. And when you said earlier at the beginning that we all need a coach, we tend to run a path over and over again and don't even recognize it as a problem and or keeping us from our goals or aspirations. And I know Kevin and I've talked about this. There's things that I could have a coach for too, but I think that is such a critical piece. So I just wanted to say that I think that, every physician should consider that, whether for their own clients or themselves, and they'll see benefits.
Yeah, for sure. The hard thing is that it's an untangible benefit. Always. Right?
It's stuff we can't see. It's always the problem.
And it's hard. And it's hard when we're all busy clinicians. We've got, kids starting virtual online school, you know what I mean? Like there's just so many things in the air that it's hard to concentrate on yourself. But as I always say to, our clients, it's like, you can't fill anyone else's cup unless yours is full. And sometimes you need to fill that in a way that seems, selfish at times, which is taking the time to value you and your brain and your body. And, there's only so many things that we can control in our life right now. And that's, what you fuel yourself with, how you move your body, what your thoughts are, and what your inner state is. And only you can make those choices. And if you can do all four of those things to the best of your ability, everyone around you is going to be better for it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that is a wonderful place to end. Otherwise, we'll be talking to you for hours and hours and hours, because I do think this is such an important thing that's been missing in healthcare in general. And so I really appreciate you coming on. And Melissa, do you have any last questions that you want to ask, or you want to close us out?
I can close us out. No, I think, health coaching in general is just a much needed thing, especially with all the chronic illness and issues and stress and anxiety that is kind of ravaging our nation and the world too. So thank you for the work you're doing and trying to scale that so that more people can benefit.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sure. And for those listening, I'm Dr. Melissa Cady of the Change Physician podcast with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and our awesome guest, and from the holist.com. And is it Holist Health or
Holist Health? The company's called Holist. The website is holisthealth.com.
Yes, holisthealth.com. Go there. Our wonderful guest, Dr. Heather Hammerstedt, and we will talk to you on the next episode. Take care.